A 13-pound iron rod launches clean through a man's skull, and he just walks away. An entire ship's crew gets stranded in the crushing ice of Antarctica for almost 2 years, and every single one of them survives. These aren't scenes from some over-the-top blockbuster. They're real, documented events about people who, by all accounts, should be dead. The human body is a marvel, but it's also incredibly fragile. Our brain, this 3-pound universe of thoughts and memories, is protected by just a thin layer of bone. We're built to operate in a very specific comfort zone. But what happens when that zone is catastrophically left behind? What happens when the human body is pushed so far beyond its limits that even science has to throw up its hands? Today, we're looking at 2 of the most extreme survival cases ever recorded. These are accounts that defy what we think we know about the human body, the mind, and the sheer, stubborn will to live. These are the stories of people who stared death in the eye and somehow saw it blink first. Number 1. The man who was no longer himself. Our first story kicks off not in some remote wilderness, but on a bustling railroad construction site in Vermont. The year is 1848. 25-year-old Phineas Gage is the foreman. He's the guy in charge, respected, efficient, and known for having a well-balanced mind. By all accounts, he was a sharp, capable leader, the kind of guy you could count on to get the job done right. That all changed on September 13th. The crew was blasting through rock. Gage's job was to set the explosive charges, drill a hole, pour in the powder, add a fuse, and then pack it all down with sand using a tamping iron. This tamping iron was basically a giant metal spear, over 3.5 feet long and weighing a hefty 13.25 pounds. It was a routine he'd done 1,000 times. But on this afternoon, a single moment of distraction, turning his head to speak to his men, sparked a catastrophe that would rewrite medical history. As he turned, his iron bar struck the rock, creating a spark. That spark hit the powder. In an instant, the tamping iron became a rocket. Propelled by the blast, the 13-pound rod shot out of the hole, entered Gage's head just under his left cheekbone, tore through the front of his brain, and exited out the top of his skull. The iron, now covered in blood and brain, landed some 80 feet away. The physics alone are staggering. An object that heavy, moving that fast, straight through a person's head. By any medical logic, then or now, this is an instantly fatal event. The trauma, the blood loss, the damage to the most critical organ, it's a scenario with a 0% survival rate. But Phineas Gage didn't die. He was thrown to the ground, and while he convulsed, he was conscious again within minutes. He was reportedly speaking and able to walk, with some help, to an ox cart to be taken into town. When the town's physician, Dr. Edward Williams, arrived, he found Gage just sitting on the porch of his hotel. As the doctor approached, Gage calmly remarked, "Doctor, here is business enough for you." Dr. Williams could literally see the man's brain pulsing through the hole in his skull. In one of the grislier details from the case, every time Gage vomited from the trauma, a little more of his brain would squeeze out of the exit wound. Another doctor, John Martin Harlow, soon took over. For the next 10 days, Gage's life hung by a thread. He battled massive infections in a world before antibiotics, his body shaking with fevers. His doctors were so sure he was going to die, they had his coffin made. But against all odds, he started to get better. By October, he was walking around town. Physically, the recovery was astonishing. Other than losing his left eye and the obvious scars, he regained his strength. No paralysis. His memory and speech were intact. 10 weeks after having a metal pole shot through his head, Phineas Gage was, for all intents and purposes, healed. But the man who came back wasn't the man his friends and family knew. The old Gage was responsible, polite, and well-liked. The new Gage, as Dr. Harlow described him, was fitful, irreverent, indulging at times in the grossest profanity. Dr. Harlow wrote that the balance between his intellectual faculties and animal propensities seems to have been destroyed. The reliable foreman was now impulsive and erratic. He couldn't stick to any plan. His employers, who once called him their best foreman, couldn't give him his job back. His friends said it more simply: He was no longer Gage. The iron rod had shredded a large part of his brain's left frontal lobe. Today, we know the frontal lobe is our personality headquarters. It governs social behavior, planning, and impulse control. Gage's case was the first real proof that different parts of the brain do different things, and that the very essence of who we are is physically rooted in that gray matter. For the next 12 years, Gage became a living medical curiosity. He even toured with his tamping iron, his constant companion, at Barnum's American Museum in New York. He eventually found work as a stagecoach driver in Chile, a structured job that some think helped him relearn some social skills. In 1860, he began suffering from severe epileptic seizures, a direct result of the old injury. On May 21, 1860, Phineas Gage died at the age of 36. Today, his actual skull and the tamping iron that passed through it sit in a glass case at Harvard's medical school, a testament to the man who survived the unsurvivable, only to become someone else entirely. Gage's story is about surviving a single violent moment. But survival isn't always a split-second event. Sometimes it's a slow, grinding ordeal that stretches on for months, even years. It's a story not of one man, but of an entire crew facing the most hostile environment on Earth. We go from a freak industrial accident to a legendary expedition into the frozen heart of Antarctica. Number 2. Endurance in the Antarctic. In August of 1914, Sir Ernest Shackleton set sail from England with a goal that was almost impossibly ambitious. He'd already been beaten to the South Pole, so he aimed for the last great prize of Antarctic exploration, the first land crossing of the entire continent. His expedition was named the Imperial Trans-Antarctic Expedition, and his ship, a vessel built tough for the ice, had an even better name, the Endurance. Shackleton was a charismatic leader who was known for putting his men first. He gathered a crew of 27 men and headed south. By December, they reached South Georgia, a remote whaling outpost and their last taste of civilization before plunging into the ice-choked Weddell Sea. The news there wasn't good. It was an unusually bad year for ice, but Shackleton pushed on. For weeks, the Endurance fought its way through 1,000 miles of pack ice. By January 1915, they were agonizingly close to their landing site at Vassal Bay. But the Antarctic decided otherwise. The temperature dropped. The loose ice floes froze together into one solid, endless sheet. The Endurance was stuck fast, as one man wrote, like an almond in a piece of toffee. At first, they were just frustrated. They were explorers. This was a known risk. Shackleton kept everyone busy with strict routines, exercising the dogs, taking scientific readings, playing soccer on the ice. But as the weeks turned into months, the horrifying truth set in. They weren't just stuck, they were trapped. The ship was now part of the ice pack, drifting helplessly in the wrong direction. For 10 months, the 28 men drifted. They survived the long, dark Antarctic winter, with no sun and only the constant groaning sound of the ice trying to crush their ship. Men would lie in their bunks at night, listening to the ship's timbers shrieking under the strain. On October 27, 1915, the ice won. With a sound like cannon fire, the stern of the Endurance was forced out of the water. Its keel snapped. The ship that had been their home was being crushed to splinters. Shackleton gave the order, abandon ship. They set up ocean camp on a thick ice floe and watched as the Endurance, their last connection to the world, was slowly swallowed by the ice. On November 21st, it slipped beneath the surface forever. Now, they were 28 men stranded on a floating piece of ice, hundreds of miles from land with no radio, no hope of rescue, and just 3 small lifeboats they'd managed to save. For the next 5 months, their entire world was that shifting slab of ice. They hunted seals and penguins to survive. Their sleeping bags were always wet, and the ice under them could split open at any second. By April 1916, their ice floe began to break apart. It was time to take to the sea. They launched their 3 small boats into the frigid, stormy ocean. For 5 brutal days, they rode through a maze of ice, soaked, frostbitten, and dehydrated. Finally, they landed on the desolate, uninhabited Elephant Island. It was the first time any of them had stood on solid ground in 497 days. The relief was incredible, but they were still in an impossible situation. Elephant Island was a remote rock far from any shipping lanes. Nobody was looking for them because nobody knew where they were. The fact that all 28 men had made it this far is a miracle of leadership and grit, and their story is far from over. If you find stories of human resilience as fascinating as we do, consider subscribing and hitting the notification bell. You won't want to miss what comes next. Asterisk. The stories of Phineas Gage and the crew of the Endurance feel like they're from different worlds, but they are both about impossible survival. Gage's story is a biological freak show, a violent split-second event that changed our understanding of the brain. It shows the body's shocking ability to withstand trauma that should, by all logic, kill you. His survival was a bizarre, lonely journey that ended up teaching science a profound lesson. These stories blur the line we think exists between life and death. They prove that people can endure the unendurable and survive the unsurvivable. They are stark, powerful reminders that inside our fragile bodies, there is a reserve of strength and a will to live that can, on the rarest of occasions, stare down death itself. Catch more awesome stories by subscribing to my channel.